Tonight, a Saskatoon bar fight leaves one woman dead, and it's all caught on tape. And
it wasn't working properly that it should have been, so we had to pause it at that point in time.
A new admin system for healthcare workers faces so many issues, it has to be paused a week after it was launched. Plus, winter blues already? Snow wallops Saskatchewan, and it's here to stay.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It's Monday, November 7th. CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Hello, and thank you for joining us. A 22-year-old woman has been charged with manslaughter after a fight at a Saskatoon nightclub left another young woman dead. Paige Fisher appeared in court today and was remanded until later this week. At least 3 people captured video of the fight. The CBC's Dan Zakreski tells us about the footage currently circulating online.
The fatal fight happened here above this downtown bar at around 3 in the morning on Saturday. Police say the accused, Paige Fisher, and the deceased, 23-year-old Hodan Hashi, knew each other. Police are not saying how the 2 women ended up fighting inside the nightclub. At least 3 graphic videos of the fight began circulating online within hours. Now, the videos show 2 women standing. One woman gets the other woman in a headlock and they fall to the ground together. Now, a noisy crowd gathers around them and a DJ in the background can be heard saying, "There's a bitch fight." Now, the woman on top is repeatedly striking the woman on the bottom in the face and neck area, but we can't see whether she has a weapon. But within moments, a huge pool of blood is forming. Then the woman who's injured stands up, staggers a few paces, and falls over. Paige Fisher was initially charged with second-degree murder, but that was downgraded to the lesser charge of manslaughter. She's back in court Thursday. Crazy Cactus bar owner called it a tragic incident, but said no comment. Dan Zakreski, CBC News, Saskatoon.
As that case in Saskatoon begins, another gruesome one in Regina nears its end. The closing arguments in a Regina murder trial have wrapped up. That means the case is now in the hands of the judge. The Dylan Whitehawk trial has focused on power struggles within a Regina street gang. The CBC's Alexander Kwan has more.
On Monday, Crown and defense attorneys put forward their cases to Justice Janet McMurtry at the Court of King's Bench in Regina. 28-year-old Dylan Whitehawk is accused of murdering Keisha Bitternose in January 2020. The court heard that Bitternose and Whitehawk were both members of a Regina street gang known as the Indian Mafia, or IM. Crown prosecutors argued that the killing was the result of an inter-gang dispute between Whitehawk and Bitternose. They said Whitehawk was angry that Bitternose was trying to climb the ranks at the expense of another higher-up member of the gang. The court heard that the IM member who testified during the trial, but whose identity is protected under a publication ban, was actually demoted in the days leading up to the killing due to Bitternose's efforts. The Crown alleges that Whitehawk carried out his plan at a home in the 1500 block of Cameron Street after a party on New Year's Day in 2020. The violence against Bitternose was not subtle, the Crown argued, and it was brutal. Bitternose suffered so many injuries that an autopsy was unable to determine her cause of death. The Crown argued during the trial that multiple pieces of evidence, including gloves and a rifle allegedly used in the murder, tie Whitehawk to the scene. Whitehawk's defense lawyer argued that the demoted IM member is actually the one responsible for Bitternose's murder. And their testimony, which formed the core of the Crown's case, should be discounted, while Whitehawk should be acquitted. The court's decision is set to be released on December 13th. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
Did you miss this as little as I did? After a storm earlier this season, winter now seems here to stay. Drivers battled icy roads this weekend that were quickly covered by snow. High winds wiped out visibility and many roads ended up closed, including part of the Trans-Canada. After a bit of a reprieve, many parts of southwestern and central Saskatchewan were hit again today. One of those brave enough to attempt traveling was our own weather specialist, Ethan Williams. He is in Saskatoon this week and joins me now. Ethan, it seems it doesn't matter which city you're in, you're going to feel the force of winter.
Yeah, it looks like old man winter has really locked his grip in Saskatchewan, Natasha, and we have the numbers to prove it from this past weekend storm system. Let's take a look at some of the accumulation amounts that we had, and let's go from north to south. Starting in Emma Lake has 17 centimeters. It was Prince Albert, the winner, 21 centimeters over these last couple of days. Saskatoon, you picked up 6, but keep in mind a lot of that was blown around, so it might not be entirely accurate. Strasbourg and Regina getting within the 11 to 12 centimeter range or so. And as you mentioned, Natasha, there is another system moving in, and that is really making conditions treacherous on the highways. Travel not recommended between Swift Current and Regina, and between Saskatoon and Regina on the number 11 highway as well. There are also power outages in southwestern Saskatchewan and around the Cypress Hills and Mmiwg area. And Natasha, it is there is still more to come here with this system. I'll have more coming up a little bit later in the cast.
Thanks for that, Ethan. Well, it's been more than 500 days since former students of a private Saskatoon Christian school filed complaints with police about abuse and assault. As CBC's Jason Warwick reports, they're frustrated no charges have been laid.
Dozens of former students say they were assaulted and abused while attending Saskatoon's Legacy Christian Academy. They say they were subjected to exorcisms, solitary confinement, sexual abuse, and a severe form of corporal punishment known as paddling. The first complaints to police were made more than a year and a half ago. Today, 35 former students have filed formal complaints to the Saskatoon police, while others have filed reports to the RCMP and other police agencies. The alleged victims say they've heard very little from police or prosecutors about possible charges, and that victims shouldn't have to wait this long.
I don't understand the process of why the police are waiting, why the Crown is waiting. I'm not actually sure, because there's been zero updates from them who is responsible or where even the files are.
Stephanie Hutchinson was one of the first to file a police report. She's worried that any delays could endanger other children.
That if you have someone who is potential danger to vulnerable people, that you would prioritize a file like that, and charging an individual if you have what it takes to charge them in order to restrict further harm to vulnerable individuals.
The student's lawyer, Grant Sharfstein, is also critical of the long wait.
Well, it seems to me to be a bit of a long time. More than a year is, I would expect, to be a bit excessive.
Saskatchewan's Ministry of Justice declined to comment on the case. The Saskatoon Police Service has confirmed that a number of investigations have been referred to the Crown to consider criminal charges. In a statement, the Saskatoon Police said, at present, no decisions have been made. As police, we understand the elevated level of public interest in this investigation, but must maintain a thorough and fair investigation for all parties involved to ensure the appropriate conclusions are arrived on. The students also hope to get justice through a proposed $25 million class action lawsuit. Like the criminal complaints, the lawsuit contains allegations of abuse and assault. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Jason Warwick, CBC News, Saskatoon.
The opposition NDP has introduced a bill calling on the government to change its duty to consult process with First Nations. Leaders who spoke today said that process is not being followed properly in this province.
Like I said, we're not against development. We want to see our people get out of poverty. We do. We understand that there's this notion of economic reconciliation. I hear people talking about that. Well, then we need to be at the table so that we can create ownership, so that our people can get to work. But we're not at the table.
Representatives from several First Nations communities visited the legislature today. They want the government to commit to creating provincial duty to consult legislation. The government says it's not needed because the Constitution requires First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people in Canada to be consulted before third parties proceed with projects like land development and resource extraction. What the provincial government is looking to fix is an administrative system for healthcare workers. The health minister called the botched rollout of the new AIMS program, quote, unfortunate. It was first introduced in late October to handle everything from payroll to scheduling. But within a week, there were so many glitches that the program had to be paused.
Mr. Speaker, we're competing with jurisdictions across the country for scarce health workers. And in addition to having a reputation of ignoring health workers and the science, this government now can't even guarantee that health workers will get paid.
That's exactly why we paused it, because we wanted to make sure the integrity of the payroll and the scheduling was done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can guarantee that the people that are in the healthcare system will receive their checks. We have reverted back to our legacy system, Mr. Speaker, which has been in place for years.
The Saskatchewan Union of Nurses filed a provincial grievance for the way the system has affected its members. AIMS is supposed to replace 80 existing systems. The company in charge says it will relaunch it after kinks have been worked out. While Health Minister Paul Merriman addressed that issue here in Saskatchewan, Rural Health Minister Everett Hindley was in Vancouver today, meeting with his counterparts from across the country. The provinces are calling for a big injection of federal money into healthcare. CBC's Mike Crawley reports.
The politicians who've gathered here have power over how your healthcare dollars get spent, and it's a lot of public money, some $200 billion a year. And the provinces want Ottawa to shoulder a bigger share of those costs.
The Canada Health Transfer is the best way for the federal government to support public health care in Canada. And surely after what we've all been through, this is the moment for us to come together and fundamentally change that in the future, so that we can ensure that those services are there today and in the months and years and decades to come.
The list of what's ailing health systems across Canada is a long one. Emergency rooms overwhelmed, ambulances unavailable, nursing shortages, and a lengthy backlog of surgeries postponed because of the pandemic.
And a lot of people in the last 2.5 years had trouble seeing their family doctors. So, a lot of chronic illness where maybe not as taken care of as much as they would have.
While the problems can't be fixed without investing more, experts say money alone won't necessarily improve the quality of healthcare. That's the Prime Minister's message too.
So yes, we will be there with more money, but we need to make sure that more investments in healthcare ends up supporting the folks on the front lines, the nurses and doctors delivering that healthcare to Canadians, and ensures that Canadians feel the results of improvements in our healthcare system.
The results the federal government wants? Better healthcare that can be measured. Things like more Canadians getting matched with family doctors, shorter wait times for surgeries, and more internationally trained health professionals getting jobs. The Trudeau government is telling the provinces they can't expect to get a whole bunch more money for healthcare unless they can show that it actually improves the healthcare that Canadians receive. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Vancouver.
The provincial government will give out $400,000 to Indigenous-led projects that aim to make women, girls, and Two-Spirit people safer.
We want to get the message out there too that instead of always being reactive, we need to start doing some preventative work.
That's Marlene Baer and Myrna LaPlante. They're two of the Indigenous women who worked with the government to launch this initiative. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Plus Community Response Fund was inspired by the final report of the Mmiwg National Inquiry. At least 10 community projects will receive up to $40,000 each. The deadline to apply is just over a month away.
Second and goal. Nias looks, far side corner, touchdown, Huskies.
The University of Saskatchewan Huskies are heading to the Hardy Cup after a resounding win this weekend. They defeated the University of Manitoba Bisons 37-9 in a snowy hometown semifinal. The Regina Rams had slightly better luck with the weather, but not on the scoreboard. They fell 28-14 to the UBC Thunderbirds. The 85th Hardy Cup is up for grabs this Saturday in Saskatoon. We'll be back after the break. An Ontario family is living in their basement because tenants occupying the main floor of their home refuse to leave, and they've stopped paying rent. On top of that, it will take months to have the dispute heard by a tribunal because cases are so backlogged. CBC's Erica Johnson has more from this Go Public investigation.
That was my daughter's room.
Hassan Khan, his wife and 3 children used to live on the main floor of their house. But for the past 6 months, they've been in the basement.
Yeah, even the mattresses, it's like one of them is thicker than the other one.
Tenants they rented their house to during a trip to India have refused to leave since May and no longer pay the $2,400 rent.
Yeah, thank you.
Go Public asked Khan's tenants for answers.
He wants you guys to leave now. Well, why won't you do that?
Next coming February, we will leave.
Endless excuses and no rent are taking a toll. Khan's filed a complaint with the LTB, Ontario's Landlord and Tenant Board, to get his renters evicted, but says that didn't bother them.
He literally laughed on my face. It's going to take at least 6, 7, 8 months. Go to LTB, do whatever you want. So that was his words.
The case backlogs the result of the tribunal temporarily shutting down in the pandemic and the Ontario government freezing eviction orders. Wait times for hearings between property owners and tenants are growing at dispute tribunals across the country.
You're pretty much at their mercy. When they get to your application, they get to your application, and definitely government has heard from us in terms of how long that's been taking.
Our request for an interview at Ontario's Landlord and Tenant Board was declined.
We've been trying for weeks to get someone from the tribunal to talk to us. There's no one available?
I understand that, and unfortunately.
The Ontario government says it's working to cut the long list of cases, but says that takes time. As for Khan, 4 months after applying for a hearing, he's still waiting for a date.
He's waiting for something else, too. November's rent. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. 22 model clear-out is on now.
Ethan Williams is back with our full forecast. Ethan, last time I waited around for the snow to melt. This time I worry I might not be so lucky.
We will not be, Natasha. Unfortunately, it looks like winter is here to stay. Nice of it to wait until after Halloween, I guess, but we knew it had to happen sooner rather than later, and the watches and warnings map is lighting up. Let's take a look at what we are seeing this evening. Snowfall warnings now in effect for much of southwestern west central Saskatchewan and really all of the central part of the province, including Saskatoon and Prince Albert, for between 10 and 15 centimeters through the night tonight into tomorrow morning. Blowing snow advisories now in place for Regina, Moose Jaw, and much of that southwestern part of the province as well. You can see that band of moisture now starting to move in, and it is actually starting to make its way out of the south part of the province at this point, as we will see in our Prairie Outlook here. This low pressure system that's responsible for this coming from Washington State, bringing through that moisture through the evening hours, but it moves pretty quickly. Central Saskatchewan, the Churchill region, you're going to see that continue through the night tonight, and then as we get to tomorrow morning, just some lingering flurries and maybe some snow showers heading through the day, but really by the time we get to tomorrow evening, we're looking at just mainly cloudy conditions. Watch out though, as we get through to Wednesday, it looks like another system moving in, but this one going to be just the remnants of a Colorado low. I think that'll mostly be impacting our neighbors to the south of us. Now, in terms of snowfall accumulation, overnight tonight again in Regina, Swift Current, I think the bulk of our snow is done, but for places like Saskatoon and up toward Prince Albert, even La Ronge, another 5 to 10 centimeters, maybe even a little more locally, can't be ruled out. Very gusty day, winds getting over 70 kilometers an hour in portions of southeastern Saskatchewan. We are going to see those winds continue to pick up through the evening hours tonight and into tomorrow. But as we get through to tomorrow afternoon and evening and through to Wednesday, I think winds are finally going to diminish as that system begins to move out. Now, visibility is going to be impacted as well through the night tonight as that snowfall continues to move in, down to 1.5 kilometers in Regina as we get into, or that's right now, but as we look through the evening hours tonight, it looks like it is going to be considerably dropping, and even into northern Saskatchewan, places like Prince Albert, La Ronge, we will see that continue to drop too. Even by the time we get to the morning hours tomorrow, past your commute into the noon hour, we still could be seeing that hanging around as well. Now in Regina, our next few days here, looking like we are going to see some sunshine come Thursday and Friday, but those temperatures are going to start to drop, and we will continue to see some lingering flurries heading into the weekend. Overnight lows also getting quite chilly, down into the -20s, and even with a little bit of wind, Yes, we may even be feeling close to minus 30 in some locations too. And in Saskatoon, very similar forecast here again. Lingering flurries tomorrow, then mainly cloudy. Sun comes out on Wednesday, getting very close to the minus 20 mark as we get into Thursday. We will see a little bit of a warm up, Natasha, as we head into the beginning of next week. But just when we thought we were done with the snow, it looks like the cold has taken hold.
There's always something, Ethan. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Stay with us. We'll be back after this break. American voters head to the polls tomorrow for the midterm elections. The vote will determine whether the Democrats and President Joe Biden will keep control of Congress. Polls tend to be favoring the Republicans. CBC's Mmiwg has the latest from Washington.
It's the last chance for candidates and their big-name supporters to convince voters to back them. Now, with Congress, all the House seats are up for grabs and 35 of the Senate seats. And there are some tight races to watch, including the Senate race in Georgia, where Democrat Raphael Warnock is trying to hang on against Republican candidate Herschel Walker. In Pennsylvania, Democrat John Fetterman is up against Dr. Mmiwg, and that race drew out the presidents this weekend. The tag team of former President Barack Obama and President Joe Biden had Fetterman's back, and former President Donald Trump was there for Oz. And last night, Biden was in New York, warning again about how democracy is at risk, while Trump was in Miami rallying support for Republican candidates.
This election isn't a referendum, it's a choice. It's a choice between two fundamentally different visions of America.
You need to vote every Democrat out of office and vote for Republicans up and down the ballot.
It's widely believed that Republicans will likely take the House, if not the Senate, too. Now, the security of these elections is an issue, with the big lie of a stolen 2020 election and other conspiracy theories swirling. Officials are preparing to step up safety measures for voters and election officials. With early voting, some 40 million people have already made their picks. As for getting the results, it is possible that we may have to wait several days. Mmiwg, CBC News, Washington.
And Ethan is back now with one last look at our forecast.
And it is going to be snowy and windy. Natasha, let's take a look at our forecast tonight at midnight in Regina, where we are going to be around -4 or so this evening, and looking at some blowing snow and blowing conditions. Again, be very careful if you are heading out on the highways. Even tomorrow morning, we are seeing some scattered flurries. Those winds going to start to die down a little bit. And then as we head toward the noon hour, we're looking at temperatures actually dropping a little bit to around -5 again. Those winds are going to pick up just slightly. Saskatoon, same thing, looking for very gusty conditions at -8. Again, be careful heading out tomorrow morning, especially along the corridor between Regina and Saskatoon. We are looking for those flurries to stop by around 8 a.m. and then that should be it for the snow. We are still looking, though, for a pretty chilly day. But that lunar eclipse, Natasha, the last one in the next for the next 3 years, don't think many people are going to get to see it tonight.
Well, that's too bad. Thank you for that, Ethan.
You're welcome.
Well, that's it for us tonight. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/sask or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Glenn Reed will be back with more local news at 11. Thanks for watching.